on our Unreal stuff. So I'm going to make sure my preferences are there if I haven't made sure my preferences are there. It's the last time I'm going to say that. I'm going to set my project. So I go to File, Set Project, click on my gaming pipeline, and then I'm going to open up my most recent one, which is that one. That's not it. It's that one. There we go. All right, now when we left off, we modeled the stairs. We laid out the UVs for it. From class to class, just as an FYI, if you don't get as far as we do during that class, you got to come into lab, or you got to do it at home, or you got to get that part done at least. So when you come to class, you're like good to go, okay? And again, it doesn't hurt to make sure you install the software at home and just start playing with it. The more comfortable you are with just navigating the interface, doing some basic UV layout, the more comfortable you're going to be, and the better your stuff is going to look. Okay, so that's where we left off, is the stairs. I'm not going to go through the substance part of this because you can do the substance part because we've done that before, right? So we have stairs in here too. The next step after we have this, we'd export it out, we bring it into Substance, we would create a texture for it, and then we would bring that model and texture into Unreal and drop those 3 items in there, okay? So I'm going to make a new layer. So I clicked on my stairs. I've labeled them stairs so I know what they are. And then I've added a new layer called Stairs Layer. And medium low res, that one.
How do you add the model to the layer?
If you click the far right button, as long as you had the model selected, it would automatically add it. If you didn't, then you would just right click on the layer with the object selected and say Add Selected Object. Okay, now also mentioned I have my stairs in my scene and I have my crates in my scene, and you can see that the scale is obviously totally different, right? So the crates, we just kind of created a crate scene or a crate cube and then went from there. The stairs, we actually looked it up, like how big are stairs, and we built these things to scale. So when we bring that into Unreal, they actually come in at the correct size. So if this is the correct size for our scene, that's our crates, right? So you can always, typically what I'll do is I'll create a reference object like stairs, and then I know, okay, these crates have to be like a lot bigger. So then I can scale up all the crates. Now this doesn't affect the texture at all. These are basically like the textures locked into these objects as long as I've scaled them all uniformly. So I'm just going to scale up my crates a bit, just so I can obviously make them so they're visible inside my Unreal scene when I export these out.
Oh, but what happened there?
There we go. All right, you can play with that later, so I'm just going to hide that. All right, so now we need to make a street light. Yes, ma'am. All right, so we're going to be making a street light. Let's go to Google. Street light. Not a stoplight, but a street light. You know, one of those things that overhangs. And we're going to be creating a very simplified version of this. You could, again, go further later and, you know, tweak it if you want, but just something simple like this, okay? So the basic construct of this is that we have a thicker base, something on the bottom that's holding it in. If you've ever seen them, they're like usually, there's a big block of cement, there's a metal plate, and then there's huge bolts that like hold it together, okay? So we're just going to keep it, like I said, simple for these simple shapes. So we'll create a, let's create a cube. Cube is like my favorite shape to start with. Again, we can use the stairs as a reference, so if we just turn it on for a second, then we can get an idea of how big this light should be.
So this isn't being done using a cylinder?
You could use a cylinder, but again, trying to keep the lowest amount of polygons on this, right? We can start off with a cube, and then if we smooth it later, then it'll add just enough to where we need them. So that looks like an appropriate size. Okay, so again, you can tweak your shapes and sizes and whatever else. You just don't want it to be 70 feet tall because that's way too big for a street light. All right, then I'm going to use the Insert Edge Loop tool, and I'm just going to pull out a face around here. Okay, so I just added a couple divisions because I need something I can extrude outward to create that light. So I use Insert Edge Loop, and then I can extrude that out. Okay, Insert Edge Loop, excuse me, adds the edges in here. We grab the face, extrude it out, and now we have that bar sitting across. Yep, just grabbing that face that's in there and extruding that. Where, right here? Yeah. Yep, you just have to make sure you put 2 edge loops there. So if I make sure that I don't, yep, good. So if I go to my Insert Edge Loop, I've clicked on one and then grabbed the other one. So now I have 2 in there.
Okay.
What's that?
I'm trying to remember the hotkey for extrude.
Shift right click is to get that, and then hotkey is Control E to extrude.
I can remember it's Control E, Shift E, or Control D.
Right. It's a lot of hotkeys. The more you use them.
I'm coming at us.
Yep. Now, you can use Shift also, which is nice. If you hold Shift and drag, it'll just extrude. That's like a new one to 2018, I think. All right, now there's several different ways you can go about modeling anything. So don't take,
Let me select faces.
are you right-clicking onto face?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so there's multiple ways. So if you're ever unsure about something, YouTube has like videos for pretty much every single thing in the world. I'm sure if they had a modeling a street light, Maya. Boom, there's a how to model a street lamp in Maya, okay? There's probably like 50 videos on how to do that too. All right, so this is my way of doing it. Feel free to watch other ones because the more you watch, the more you're getting exposure to other methods and just you'll become more experienced. So here's one way to do it is we extruded. I need to create the end part of this, so I'm going to extrude again. So I have basically like a little area that I could then pull my lamp part out of from there. All right, now I want this to be perfectly round, okay? It's impossible for me to actually make that perfectly round with only 4 points. That's as round as it's going to get. If I hit 3, well, then that just looks stupid like that. That doesn't make sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually smooth this out, and then I'm going to flatten out some of these areas that don't look very good, okay? Now, before I hit 3, I know that when I do actually smooth it, it's going to do this. It's going to create this like weird looping thing here. So in order for it not to do that, I need to insert an edge loop right here and insert an edge loop right there. So I'm going to insert an edge loop right here and insert an edge loop right there. And just for fun, I'll insert one on top too. Okay, so I inserted 1, 2, and 3. Remember, shift right click, and then insert edge loop. Nope, just on object mode. Yeah, make sure you're on object mode, because if you're on edges, it'll just bring up the stuff like, what do you want to do to edges? If you're on object mode, then it knows I want to insert edge loops. Or you can just go up to Mesh Tools and insert edge loop tool there. And remember too, these tear off. So if you're constantly forgetting what things are, you can always pull that menu aside, or you're constantly going to that. So sometimes it's easier just to have this here, jump over there and grab it. All right, so now I'm going to hold down Shift, right click, and go to Smooth. Make sure you're in object mode, and Shift right click, and then go to Smooth.
Oh, is that like a permanently putting a 3 on it?
Yes. Yep. So this is actually putting a 3 on it so that it does smooth it out. So we get this like stake in the bottom because it's smoothing those points at the bottom and just creating that. So remember I said that sometimes we may want to snap something so that it flattens out. This is one of those times, okay?
I accidentally made this weird. I don't know what it did, but it did something.
Hit undo then. So I'm going to go to Vertex. And if you look at the vertices for it, you'll see that one is down, one is up, one is down, one is up, and so on. I'm going to grab all of these vertices here. And if I go to scale, I can just scale those flat and then move them back down. Okay? Now when you scale, just grab the green, the up one, because that's the only direction we want to scale it in. Yep. I could have, yep, before I did the smooth. But then it would have added more there. Again, not a huge deal because it's only one loop, but yeah, we could have done that.
What is that and why is it there?
What was that? To get rid of the spike? Yep. I'm just grabbing all the points in the bottom, switching to my scale tool, and then this one here on the top that's green, I'm just dragging that flat. Mm-hmm. How to get what? The dots? Those are vertices. So right click and go to Vertex. Oops. Now here's where I could have used the Move tool, and I could have used my Snap to Grid and snapped it to the grid there. Okay, so that's another way to do it if I needed to do it that way. Mm-hmm. Just scale them all together. So this is why we can't just grab the one, because it's more than just the 1 point that's the issue. Oh, stupid. So it's all these other points that we have to flatten that, and then come these and flatten that. So it's easiest, scale it all together. Okay. All right, so there's that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this area of the lamp post where I want to put that light, okay? So just like everything else, you can grab points and vertices and faces and whatever, and hit F, and it'll just jump you right to it, all right? So you're like right on top of it. Make sure you're oriented the correct way, so you're not, because this is obviously symmetrical all the way around, so it will be just as easy for me to not pay attention and do this here, and that's the top left of it, not the bottom of it. Okay, so I want to create basically a circle right there. Maya has a tool for that, so I'm first going to insert an edge loop right about there. Because I need 4 faces basically like right about at this point.
Is insert edge loop only on the
Only on object mode.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
You just put that almost right down the middle?
Yep. Well, right here, yeah, right at the end.
Yeah.
Yep.
This right about here?
Yeah, you're like doing the pie that was too like
So
yeah.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
All right, so I'm going right about there. And then we're grabbing the 4 faces right on the bottom. Okay, just those 4 right together. And then I'm going to go shift right click. Somewhere inside this list is circularize components.
Ooh.
And that takes it and makes it into a circle. And that's like pretty awesome because back in my day, we had to make our own circles. It may need a slight rotation,
Yeah.
right? So mine's kind of like wonk. So I'm just going to rotate it slightly. And that is good enough. Oops, maybe the other way too.
Is that brand new?
It is. It's amazing, right? You guys have no idea. Go to shift right click and go to circularize. And then just spin around and make sure it's as flat as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, just as flat as you can.
Oh, I see. Make sure.
Yeah, just so you guys can see how awesome that tool is. This is what we would do back. So before we had the circularize tool, if I wanted to make a circle, I would go into, make sure I had enough divisions, and then I would go through and have to manually kind of like push and pull points until it looked like, hey, that's kind of a circle. Sometimes we bring in a cylinder reference, and that would work, you know, but the fact that I can just go now and just grab 4 faces and go boom, and there it is, that's like amazing. There's also in the attribute editor, this is where you can get more of those options. There's a twist inside here, so you could of course fix the twist that way. Oops. You can relax the interior. In this case, there's nothing to relax.
Let's go to like one of the side views.
Offset. No. Don't worry about it too much. I mean, just, you know, it doesn't have to be even. It's too far away. It's too far away for us to even see that.
But what if someone gets the camera really close and they see that it's uneven and they judge me for it?
Oh no.
And then all of a sudden the rest of my portfolio is just garbage. They can't look at it because they're like, this thing here, yeah, not even.
Yep. So once we have those 4 faces, we're just going to extrude it and then scale it up.
Oh, you scale it up from what? Sorry?
So I grab them. I'll do it, let's say here. Well, I just got to undo mine. Oh, perfect.
You extrude
Alright.
that out?
So I extrude this out
Ah, okay, yeah.
like this, and then I switch to my scale tool
And you just scaled it.
and then just scaled it like that.
I was wondering, like, oh shoot, did you extrude that? How did you get like that? Did you just scale it? What?
Yep. And I it's 2. It's extrude out just to get it, and then just regular scale, not an extrude scale or anything, just a regular scale. And then to get it inward, I extrude again, and then I just scale it, and then move it. Oops, sorry, scale it, extrude one more time.
Okay, my Cinema 4D's coming back to me.
Yeah.
I'm creating cool drones too. Now I'm learning how to make a sound. What is? Well, that's weird. It's not. When I go to Control E to extrude it back inward, it's not a thing.
So detailed you want to go with an object is all the different tools you're going to use, where you're going to put stuff in. So if you look at mine, I added this little base down here. Any ideas how I did that?
Insert an edge loop and then just scale it up.
So if I scale it,
Ah, shit, that's right. No, you gotta extrude.
yep, extrude, right? So if I just extrude, pull it out, boom.
So do I just, if I go, so I just go to here.
All right, you can come back and tweak the shape of this if you want, but just, you know, look at some of the stuff that I could do to mine. I'm going to just move some of the points and move some of these points. Okay, so this is not stuff you're doing. This is just stuff I'm showing you could do if you wanted to come back into this later on and kind of play with it.
That's weird.
I'm grabbing the faces here, and then I can use the bridge tool and actually create a bridge between these two items. So now I have this connection very similar to some of these pictures they have. Where is it? I'm not crazy. There it is. There's a little connector there, a little connector there,
A bevel to this, and
connector
it's
there.
not letting me.
Yeah, I wouldn't add a bevel to these ones.
No, to the light, the outer.
Oh, the
rim.
outer rim? Yeah, definitely don't have one there.
What? No, I can.
You can, but no one's going to see it. It's too far away.
I don't care. It's gonna look smooth.
On this bridge, I can also change the kind of bridge to a blend. I just need more divisions. That's not the correct direction bridge. Maybe I will go. I can do this as a curve also, and then maybe offset to.
And what's the bridge tool? Is that under?
It's under that same one. And then I can go ahead and tweak those points if I needed to.
Is that the same one of what? I'm sorry.
When you grab the faces and you shift right click, it'll say bridge.
Ah, we got faces.
Yep. And then I can go through and, kind of change the shape of that if I want to. Okay? So there's a lot of stuff that you can do to these even after the fact to add more detail to them. This is a starting point. That's the whole purpose of these first 3 or 4 things that we're doing, the bat and then this stuff, is that it's starting points to get us to that next stage of understanding how to bring stuff in. All right? So what's the next step of this? If our model is done,
Pulling it and bringing it into a the software, the thingy. You know what I'm talking about.
into Substance.
Yes,
So if I bring this, it's ready to go into Substance now.
Totally wasn't gonna say Unreal.
UV. All right, so we have to UV. If we take us into Substance now, it's going to be a mess. So go to your UV editor.
Oh, hey, look, that is a mess.
You can turn your checkerboard on. Yep, you're going to see it's a huge, disgusting blob of lines and streaks and whatever else. So before we start laying out any UVs, we have to do 2 things. What are the 2 things we have to do? Nope, not yet. Okay. Well, one more thing or 2 things we have to do before we do any of that. It has to do with these guys. Freeze transforms, right? So under Modify, go to Freeze Transform. And then go to your Delete History. Once you're done modeling something, it's typically a good idea to delete the history. So I always pair those things together. Freeze the transforms, then delete history. Modify, freeze transform, edit, delete by type history. Okay. So now we could go through and try to unfold this. Most likely by even doing anything on this, I think it's going to just be a mess. We'll find out. So try out your unfold. It's a circle. Your shape may be different than mine. Mine is a circle. And definitely not nice at all. Okay.
Delete history, then unfold.
Yeah, you can try to unfold. It's not going to work, but you can definitely try it. All right. So I told you to, whenever you're looking at different shapes, you should consider them what kind of shape when you're unfolding. What if it did work? That'd be a miracle. Did yours work? This is easy already because this pretty much is cylinders, right? So if you remember from when we talked about optimizing our stuff, we want to get rid of any unnecessary faces. So where are the unnecessary faces on this? The very bottom, right? So let's get rid of those. So just delete the very bottom faces. And I would probably say that's all that we need to delete on that. Okay, so grab those faces in the bottom, hit the delete key, gone. Now when we're laying out UVs, where are the breaks typically going to happen on a UV that we cut? think back to like the stairs here. Where did those breaks happen? What's that? Right here, right? Anytime we're changing direction, that's typically when we're going to have a break. So on the stairs, we broke it right here at the edges of the stairs. These ones we didn't need to because we were able to lay those out perfectly flat, but if there was some reason we couldn't, then it wouldn't work. And the same thing with the crates. When we looked at their UVs, they're all broken wherever it's changing direction, okay? So this lamp is no different. Every object you do is going to be no different, okay? Well, some will be different, but for the most part for now, just deal with it. All right, so I know that there's going to be a break right here, right? Because this is where it changes direction. It's going straight down, and then it's going to change direction and go flat, and it's going to go straight down again. So I know that right here and right here are two areas where it's going to change direction. So those are going to be separate pieces already. So I'm going to go to my faces, and I'm going to grab these faces, and these faces, and these faces, and not those. I don't want the arm faces, I just want those ones. So I'm grabbing all of these faces that go basically straight up into that one cylinder direction. Then you can hold Control and deselect. And what I do is I marquee a lot, right? So if I accidentally marqueed too much here, I'll hold down Control and just deselect that. When you're holding Control, right, it's still going to select it. You're just going to Control deselect it.
No, we're not selecting the text stuff.
So selection is part, obviously, you know, holding down Shift or Control Shift and dragging, but it's also like changing your angle. So if I'm over here and I drag this, there's no way for me to deselect that chunk without rotating my camera around so that I can grab the correct area. All right, let me put that up there. So what I want to do is I want to grab all of these pieces that are basically facing that outward direction along that trunk, and then I'm going to go to UV and I'm going to say cylindrical mapping because that shape that I just selected was cylindrically. Okay, I don't need to do anything else after that. I just click cylinder and that's it.
Cylinder under what?
Under UV, cylindrical.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's right. Okay.
Oops. You go to UV and you say cylindrical map. Okay. Now what that does is it breaks all those pieces off into a cylindrical projection, right? So just leave those as they are. We will unfold them later. They don't look perfect yet. Right, don't even worry about those. Now I'm going to grab the next one down here. And what shape is that? We have 3 to pick from. Is it spherical, planar, or cylindrical? Planar, right? Completely flat means planar. So go to the option box for planar. And we want to specify what direction this is projecting from. So the X direction is shooting from one side, the Z is facing from the other side, and the Y is shooting down from the top. So we want Y in this case. So we'll project that. And that one will actually look pretty decent. Okay, so we grab those top faces, and we just did a planar map on those. The thing around it? Nope, because when we do the unfold, it'll automatically fit it to correct sizing. Okay, there's a very top couple faces that we didn't select, or if you did select them, you can just re-select them and do a planar on those as well. It's some tiny squares.
Oh, those are some small squares.
let me turn off. I don't need to see this checkerboard. I already know that this is, it's easier to look at it like this. All right, so let's see what else. All right, so we have this piece here. Now this one is pretty cylindrical, but I think we're going to have a hard time getting a cylinder to follow it correctly, right? So there's nothing wrong with us just doing a planar map on this one and then cutting it off later, okay? So I'm going to do a planar. This time I'm going to look at my axes down here. So yours, if you modeled yours in a different direction, yours is going to be different. So just figure it out. In mine, the Z direction is the one that's facing this side. If I go to my move tool, you can also see the Z is the one how I would move it this way. Okay? So I'm going to pick Z and then apply that. All right? And that's how it should look when you're done, like the planar map is like right there.
The planar map looks like a side view pretty much?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
If we did it the wrong way, it would be like this.
Well, why not grab these ones here? The ones that are all stretched and just make them...
No,
Oh, that's weird.
yeah, the ones we've already done, when we unfold it, it'll automatically kind of reshape everything that's there. This part is not laying them out correctly. It's just basically separating the pieces into chunks. So now I'm going to grab this one here. I think I missed those bottom two on the other one. I'll have to add that back into those.
Yep. Hey, look, I did too. Oh, what about that?
All right, then once you have those done, then you'll do another cylinder map. Now, the only difference with this one is that it needs to be rotated. By default, for whatever reason, it always comes in with the same orientation, always like flat. So if you go over to your channel box, you can try rotating it in X or Z, and typically that will be sufficient to take care of that.
If you go to what box?
The channel box here, and you rotate it in X or Z here. One of those will be the correct way so that it's oriented basically along it.
I forget inputs to show.
You went to UV and cylinder map, right?
Yes.
Then over here on the right, you just scroll down,
Oh, there it is. Okay.
should be there.
You're changing rotate Y?
I changed Z. So that's the one it was on mine. Yours might be X, might be Y, I doubt it, but it could be. And then rotate Z would be the other one. So one of those should be 90 degrees in order to get it to rotate correctly.
Ooh.
Okay?
Mine's also Z.
By default, it comes in like this, like all scrunched up. You don't need to stretch it out, or you don't need to wrap this around. Okay? Those are just like some of the default, or the other things you could do to it. Maya's unfold should take care of all of that stuff later. So don't worry too much about that right now. And then what do we have left? We have this top piece here, so these faces. That should be a planar. And, oops, and this is in the X direction on mine. There we go. And then we have the light itself. That'll be a cylinder. And then that should be it. So now we should be able to go into here, grab everything, do the unfold, and then do a layout and just see where we're at. I just grabbed all of them and just did all that as one. I'm going to have to cut it anyway, I know, but I think that's good enough. All right, so once you have it unfolded, once you've gone through the layout process, then it's time to analyze what we have, what looks good, what doesn't look good, what needs fixing. Every project is going to be different. You didn't select the same faces probably that I did, unless you were super exact. Even I wasn't 100% correct. So you're always going to have some tweaking to do inside here, okay? So watch mine first, and then you can tweak yours. So looking at this, this part looks good, this part looks good. I'm sure that part up there is good because it's just a plane. Inside here, I never cut this to separate it. So if you look at how that shape got separated here, this doesn't look very good. So I'm going to automatically cut that one so that that's cut around here. I'm also going to sew this other side, so I'm just going to sew that. Also, this piece, this is the one we did that planar map on. That piece turned out horrible. Like, that's what it looks like. It shouldn't look like that, right? So I know I have to cut it somewhere. So I'm going to go in here and cut it, let's say there. All right, now as I double click, I have to be careful because it also may double click and loop all the way around my lamp. I don't want that. So I'm going to cut it, and then I go through that process of grabbing everything, unfolding it, and then laying it out. And then what you'll find is that by doing that, the pieces come together. Like everything will just kind of make more sense as you start breaking these into pieces.
I told Maya to lay out the thing and it crashed.
Uh-oh. Do it again. Now also notice here I messed up. I forgot to grab these two faces when I did my one, right? Under here. And those guys are right there. So I'm going to edge, and I'm just going to merge them in. So if I look at where they're broken apart, right here, there, there, and there. So I can just move and sew. Grab everything, unfold again, lay out again. Beautiful. All right, now looking at the pieces that we have here, I always want to look at the biggest piece in my group, and then I would look at the second biggest piece in my group. So what's the biggest piece in my group? That one. Okay, so this is the biggest piece. So what that means is that all of my other geometry is locked to be the size it is because this piece literally couldn't get any bigger inside this view. I could do a couple things to correct that. Okay, so let me just slide these over here. Remember, we want to have squares all the same size and as tiny of a squares as we can. Okay, so we're optimizing this box. So if I take this and I rotate it about 45 degrees, let me change my grid here. I have this set up for something else. Nope, that's not it. Dim, filter, image range. Where is my grid? There it is. All right, so I just shrunk my grid so it's easier to see where it cuts off. So if I rotated this on an angle, I can scale it up about that big, okay? So that would give me a little bit more room, and then all of these pieces would just be able to fit kind of inside here like this. Now because this one's scaled up, that one's not going to be able to get scaled up at all because of just, you know, where it's at. So I think even with this, I still wouldn't get a big enough distribution. So I'm going to do something different. Just going to rotate that flat. I'm going to go to my edges and maybe just break this right there. So if I cut it right there and then do my stuff again, unfold shouldn't really need to be there, but we'll just do it anyway. And then lay out again. What should happen is it should fill that square a bit nicer. Look at that. Look how much more room we have, or how much more room we've used up inside there. Okay? And so what that means is that more of our texture will be able to fit inside this area because we've laid it out much, much nicer. All right, so I'm going to save the scene so I don't destroy it. And I'm going to give it a name, lamp post. All right, now looking at this surface, how many different materials do you think we would need for it?
One for the ground,
3.
one for the metal, and one for the light.
Yep. So we have 3. We have the light, we have the metal here, and then we have the concrete. We could even go a step further and say maybe this would be wood, and then this would be metal, and that, whatever. So 3 materials is what we would use on here. So we could go into Substance, and we could definitely just grab those faces because they're pretty easy to isolate or select. But there's another way to do it because Maya allows us easier ways to select things inside here. So I'm going to go to Face Mode, and I'm going to marquee just these bottom faces where the concrete is. Okay, so just where that concrete block would be, I'm going to grab those faces. And then under, is that what I want to do it? I think so. Yes, that's it. And then under Mesh Display, I want to go to Apply Color option box. And I'm going to give this a random color, so just like bright red. And then say Apply. So what this is doing is it's not putting a material on here, it's giving us a way to help separate the materials inside of Substance. So Substance will be able to pick up this red color and say anything with this red color on this object, I'm going to assign that material to it. Okay? Mm-hmm.
How long did it take for it to lay out UVs?
How long?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to grab those and I applied the color. And I'm going to grab everything that's this material. It's much easier to do inside Maya. And I'll do another apply color. And I'll give this a different material, yellow, let's say. And then I'll grab all of these with this guy. Do another apply color. Cool. So now I can delete the history on this again. I can save it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this out. Now what Substance will do is it'll actually read this as vertex color. And then it'll be much easier to texture everything because it'll just let me do it. Just let me do it. So I'm going to export this out. Come on. Now I believe in this case I'm going to need to export it as an FBX. Is that right? Geometry. I'll try it as both just to see which one works. All right, so this process is going to be 90% the same as what we've done before. Another version of Substance, holy cow. I export it as an FBX and then as an OBJ.
I determined that Maya hates me. Like it's grown sentient and said you there.
And it just says no.
We could just like not crash.
All right, so I brought it into Substance. I'm going to bake the texture. I'm going to tell Maya to use the low poly as high poly, just like we did before. And under ID, I'm going to make sure it's set to vertex color. And what should happen is it should read those vertex colors and create a vertex color map, an ID map. And we'll see if that works. And if I look down here at my ID map, you'll see that it's definitely colored. If I hit B to go through those, there's my ID map, and you'll see those are the same colors that I chose inside Maya. So now watch how easy this is to isolate stuff. I go to my Smart Materials, I drop on aluminum, that's going to be the metal part, right? Instead of going, I'm still going to go to mask, but instead of going to add black mask, I'm going to say add mask with color selection. And what this does is it says, okay, which color are you going to be selecting? And I say pick color, I want that. And so now it automatically masks those items out. So that those items are now going to be this aluminum color. So there's no more selecting faces, it's all just a matter of me being able to grab those things. So then I can grab something else. So we said there was concrete, so I think one of these is concrete, or cement, copper. Well, there's no cement. All right, I'll use bronze statue. That'll be good enough. And now I'll use my mask, add with color selection, pick color, that will be the red. Cool. And then plastic dirty, add with color selection, and that will be that. Okay. So that's how we were able to get those colors selected pretty quick. Now when we export this map out, it's going to send out 3 different materials. One's going to be for, or 3 different files. One will be for the base color, so just like this. One will be for the, oops, where's that? That one, the height, normal, and base color. So any kind of bump that we have here, which is hard to see on the other area, but you can definitely see it on the base. And then it will have a roughness map, a metallic map, and an ambient occlusion map, all baked into a third map. And then we could take that and bring that into Unreal. It's pretty sweet. Okay, so I'm just going to save this as lamp post. And that was the FBX that I brought in, the OBJ. I'll wait till it gets done saving. Say it again. You went to mesh display and then apply color. And then once you have the faces selected, you just pick a color and then say apply. No, you have to grab the faces. So let's say these faces here I want to be a different material. I grab those faces. I go to that apply color. And then I just say apply. And that puts those faces with that color on there. So if I were to export this as an OBJ, the OBJ doesn't transfer that information. So that's why that one's different, because the OBJ doesn't save that stuff in there. Okay, so it had to be an FBX. All right, so once you get done with this part, bring that into Substance, make your texture, and then bring all 3 of these items into Unreal. Okay. Next class we'll be working on this. I'll show mine brought over from Substance, textured, brought into Unreal. I already have them done because I've already shown that several times, that process. And then I'll show you how you can make the stairs interactive so that your character can walk up the stairs, and how he can hit the barrel and make the barrel or the crate like knock over. Okay. So I'll just show those. Those shouldn't be too long. Cool? Questions on this yet?